Alright, so since I just put this together, I thought I would do a more concise disassembly and reassembly video. And then for reference, we have all the SKUs on the parts breakdown, in addition to the RPR numbers. A couple of things that aren't really listed is the quick disconnect piece. So it's this piece, another piece that goes on your air hose. And then there's a needle rebuild set that isn't on here. It's both needles, this part, and this part here. So that's the SKU for that. So let's get started. So let's start at the front and take that apart. So we have our cover, and we have our needle guard. Then we have this tip here. Then we have this. And this piece here. I'm going to go ahead and take the needle out now, so I don't keep stabbing myself. So that was an issue that I had earlier also. This was not screwed in tight enough, and so the nut actually loosened that, but I'll talk about that more in that part. So we'll pull the needle out, and we'll just put this back on for now. Get our trigger back in. Okay, so that's the front of the airbrush there. I don't have this plastic cap, so I can't take that out. So now I'll take the trigger assembly apart. That's very easy. After you take the needle out, this will be loose. And then there's that piece there. We're going to call the trigger bar. So that goes there. Next, let's take the back end apart. So first we'll unscrew this. And that has two pieces. So we have that piece there and that piece there. Then we can go ahead and unscrew this. So there it caught. You want to make sure then you pull this out, and then you'll be able to unscrew it the rest of the way. So we can set our body down for a second, and that leaves us with this piece here. So first, we'll take that nut off the back. Then there's this second one here. It's just the very, very top. And that's piece there. Then we can take this out, and our spring comes out. So then we have this piece and that piece there. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and take my quick disconnect off. There's a little O-ring in there. And that goes in there. So that part isn't shown, but that's SKU number 29036. Then we can take this apart here. And so that unscrews. And you're left here with the assembly that gets the air in there. A little needle there. on the bottom. So really the only tool that you need to take this apart is a screwdriver, unless you've been painting with it for a while and you get some buildup or something in one of the pieces and kind of locks it up. But I'll grab my screwdriver. And I actually needed 2 different size screwdrivers for another part yet. So then this unscrews. And there is a spring in there, so I like it to be pointed down. It's not a real strong spring, so I don't think you'll be shooting any parts across the room, but it's easier to just do it that way. Give that just a little tap. So now we have all our pieces for this here. So we have that. I'm not going to take the O-ring off, but there is a teeny tiny O-ring on here. It's got its own SKU, so if you need one, you can order it. The SKU on it is 29018. Then our needle assembly here goes right there. Then our screw there. So there's one other part that we need to take out. And it's really not going to show up on camera at all, but it's the guide for the needle that goes through the body. And that's where I needed the smaller screwdriver to get down in there. Flat blade screw with a hole in the center for the needle to go through. And you can just get down in there with a small screwdriver and unscrew that. And so that piece is not shown on this diagram. Boy, that's going to roll away. And so there we go. When I bought the parts, this was already in there. So I don't know that you would need to buy it separate, but it's good to know it's in there because it doesn't show up on the parts diagram anywhere. All right, so in reverse order, let's put it all back together. So we're going to take our body, and first I'm going to put this in. So that little white part there, and of course you need that towards the back so you can thread it in. What I found easiest is you just drop it straight down and get it close, and then you can reach in with the screwdriver and kind of get it down into the hole. And so when you start screwing this in, if it gives you any resistance, try it again so you don't strip that out, because it is really easy to screw in. So I would imagine that if it's tough to screw in, there's something wrong. And then we just snug that up. And that's our first piece together. So let's go ahead and put the air delivery system together. So we have this piece here. And first, we're going to drop our needle in, just like that. And then we're going to drop our spring in, just like that. And then we're going to drop our screw in, just like that. Then we grab our screwdriver. And we just screw it in. So I guess we only need one tool. I can get this screwed in with the smaller screwdriver. And then just snug it up. Don't have to crank on it, just tighten off. And then this end here, with the needle poking out, screws into the body. And again, we don't need to crank on it, just finger tight. There we go. Now let's put this together here. So this piece in here is keyed to this here. So that's comes in important later. If you can't get this to push in, just give it a little turn, it'll drop right in. No issues whatsoever. So we put that in there, it's keyed in. We take our spring, drop that on in there. I'm going to take this piece here and screw that on. Then we'll just take and put this on here for now. And then we want to test it. Should have a little spring to it. And it does. So obviously that's the part that pushes the trigger back forward. So this is probably the easiest thing to put back together in the back. So let's put that together. And to get it past that O-ring, the O-ring's nice because it gives it just a little bit of resistance when you're screwing it in. So you may need to push it just a little bit. I cranked it to where it's even right here. We'll see how that all lines up later. And let's put this assembly together here. So that just kind of balances in there. There is an O-ring down here. I don't know if it helps or anything because this piece doesn't really touch it. We can tighten this down here. And again, just snug it up. Put the air guide on, snug it up. And I've been keeping the needle guard in this position for now until I get used to it so I don't mess up my needle. Alright, so now we can put this piece in. And this piece and the trigger have to go together somewhat at the same time. So I'm going to put it in there a ways. And then I get my key lined up so I can move it in and out. And I'm going to bring up a picture here. So if you look in there, you see kind of a semicircle, and then you see the needle. And so coming back out, this lip right here rides on that semicircle or the circle. And then the hole in the end here rides on that pin coming up. So first of all, this has to go in. And the T goes up, so we want these little ears here to be facing upward. And here again, you got to make this sure this is kind of pulled out of your way. And you just drop it in like that. And so now I'm wedged in back behind that little lip in there from the photo, and I can finish screwing this in the rest of the way. And that'll put the spring kind of forward. Now, the trick that I learned here in my very limited operation is I crank on this pretty hard, and then when I'm tightening this to hold the needle in, I don't tighten that very hard because sometimes this whole piece will start unscrewing and then you gotta unscrew this and kind of hang on. You know, you can get it unscrewed to like there, and then you gotta take one hand and hang on and then kind of grab that and break it free. So I tighten that one pretty solidly. Okay, now we can see this springs back and forth. And so what I like to do is I take that and I push it away and it locks into that area right there. And so I don't have to fight that while I'm trying to drop the trigger down on the pin. So the trigger can go in either way. I prefer to have the little steps here forward, give me a little more purchase on it. And that just drops straight down. And when you get it, you should feel a little spring up and down. And that means you're in the right spot. And then I take this and just let it ride forward. And I lost my trigger here. So let's try that again. Drop it straight down. I'm on the spring. I'm going to hold it in a little bit this time and just give that a little push. And now my trigger's in with this forward. So now to capture that, I'm going to put my back end in here, which has to be put on before the needle goes in. I'll loosen that back up and put the needle in. Now this is the other spot that I made a couple errors. If this trigger isn't lined up right, if it's too high, you can actually have it sitting there and still get the needle through, but then it just falls out. And if you actually tried pushing down on it real hard, you'd bend your needle. So if it's kind of like so if your trigger is high for some reason, you can still get that needle in there, but then you've put the trigger over it. So you got to make sure no, I can't lock that in because I've got the piece screwed in all the way. Got to make sure the needle goes through the trigger and then it's captured, it won't come out. And we can tighten our needle down, just finger tight, doesn't need to be super tight. And there it goes. I can put this back on. I did put my O-ring back in there. Put my cover on. And there it is. Thanks for watching. If this was helpful, please like and subscribe.